Representative Henderson. Representative Larson. Representative Sherwood. Representative Stiff. Representative Walters. Representative Swanitzer.
Here.
Chairman Nicholas.
Okay, first bill that we have up is House Bill 25, School Capital Construction Transfers and Distributions. Representative Walters, you want to kind of walk us through this bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, before us is House Bill 25. And really I'm not going to walk you through it page by page because we've seen this concept before. The idea of this bill is to eliminate some of the sub-accounts. And so what this bill does is it eliminates the major maintenance sub-account and the state mineral royalty sub-account so that all of those funds go straight to the school capital construction account, as opposed to going to these sub-accounts and then to the state capital construction account. So it just simplifies it. I would draw your attention to the top of page 3 in lines 6 and 7. It brings in the discussion of the Wyoming Penitentiary Capital Construction Account. And all that language does is it prioritizes the accounts. And so it's saying that the funding from SIPA that goes to school capital construction, that will be paid prior to a deposit into the penitentiary account. That's why that language is brought into the bill here. And again, the mineral royalty, state lands mineral royalty account and the SIPA sub-accounts. This money from SIPA is 0.45% of SIPA. And currently the way it's structured, then it goes to what is called the major maintenance sub-account. And so we're eliminating that and just moving it over to the school capital construction account.
So this
And
is
then-
I'm sorry.
And then on the bottom of page 2, and it does it again on the top of page 4, it's really what I would call boilerplate language that discusses how the auditor will make the transfers.
So this is very similar to a House appropriation or joint appropriations bill. There's a few things that are not in it. And so in some ways we like this better. So any public comment on the bill? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We have a motion on the bill. Moved by Representative Walters, seconded by Representative Henderson. Discussion on the bill. Question being called. Roll call.
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Sherwood. Aye. Representative Stitt.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. The next bill on our agenda is House Bill 53. This is a management council bill. I don't know, have any of you had the opportunity to read it? It creates a state official compensation commission. And the membership, I think, is interesting in who's appointed it. 3 members of the commission appointed by the governor, 2, I'm finding page 3, 2 appointed by the chief justice, 1 appointed by the president of the Senate, 1 by the speaker of the House. What's the will of the body? I'm not exactly jumping up and down for this thought.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't see the need for this commission in general.
More importantly, not the need for the given of the makeup of the commission. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure, but make sure I understand. I believe the purpose of this bill was so legislators wouldn't have to vote on their own salary. And they were trying to take some of that spotlight. Is that not the case?
I mean, it primarily deals with salaries of electeds.
5 elected. Okay.
And us as well.
And us, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
However, Mr. Chairman, when we vote on an increase for the legislature, then it doesn't take effect until the next legislative term, right? In 2 years. I think that, or 4 years, thank you. I think that the pushback is if you have the governor, the Supreme Court justice, and who is the other?
Members, one member of the House, one member.
Not the House and Senate, then I think the public would have a tendency to say, well, they cherry pick and pick people who they want, who will be sympathetic to giving raises to public employees. And I think we have the information available to us through LSO on what pressures and what other stuff aren't. And then for us to make a decision on that, I'm struggling a little bit with it.
Mr. Chairman, 2 questions. One, is there anyone here to speak on behalf of the bill from in Management Council or otherwise? And the second question is, are we required to take any action on the bill?
Well, we will take action. We can table it, we can vote it down, we can say, we don't want to make this decision, we'll pass it to the floor, let it be debated.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, but just for committee, this is a direct referral and not a re-referral. So we'll determine the fate of the bill today, or unless we hold back because nobody from Management Council is here.
Well, I'll entertain a motion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to add an observation that while I agree, it looks like we're handpicking the people who will make the decisions on how much we get paid. That is uncomfortable. I do want to just call out one of the goals of the commission in terms of thinking about compensation necessary to encourage candidates to seek election, which would produce a legislature that is representative of the Wyoming electorate as a whole. I hope that would result in more women running for office. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm reluctant to abdicate the legislature's position and authority relative to the appropriations. And that's one thing. The other thing is, I think we're more than capable of deciding amongst ourselves. We involve the executive branch in the legislation in terms of consideration of any changes. And thirdly, I just don't see how we're going to be able to do all this for the amount that's in the fiscal note at $5,000. So I would be against that.
So I'm gonna, yeah, I'm thinking I'll table it and we'll go ask the good speaker if he wants to come discuss it with it. I don't want to just kill it out of, because it looks to me like it's going to go down 7-0 or 6-1.
Mr. Chairman, let's keep it alive while we've been here today, and I'll try and reach out to speaker,
Okay,
see if he wants to, and then if at the end
we could bring him back up.
we'll, yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to get a clarification because when you look on page 5, lines 1 through 5, I thought it addressed the legislature. It says for a member of the legislature, the total compensation necessary to encourage candidates to seek election, which would produce a legislator that is representative of the Wyoming electorate as a whole. So does that not, or am I misunderstanding what I'm reading?
Pages 5 and 6, Mr. Chairman, show at the bottom of page 5, top of page 6, shows the list of the people that this commission would be, or positions this commission would be looking to address compensation. If that's the question that was just asked.
Well, yeah, that's just language that that the commission will consider. You know, and they're making it, they're trying to I think, find a way to get pay increases essentially. But I just think we'll wait to management council. And if they'll come back today, we'll talk to them. If not, we'll do it tomorrow or whenever they want to present somebody. So with that, we will move on. Next bill is House Bill I don't see. Yeah, it's House Bill 97.
This House Bill 97. Mr. Chairman,
97.
I can present from the table there if you prefer.
Where's 97? Okay, 97. You got 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I present House Bill 97, ask for your favorable consideration. Currently, if a governmental entity is the defendant in a lawsuit, the lawsuit must be brought in district court. We created the Chancery Court to accelerate business disputes. So right now, the State Treasurer's Office, for example, is reluctant to put venue clauses in its contracts with its investment advisors that would designate the Chancery Court as the jurisdiction for disputes, as the venue for disputes. Because if there's a counterclaim, then that counterclaim would have to be heard in district court under current law. As a result, the district court becomes the de facto default venue for all disputes. So this would be permissive. It would allow a governmental entity, if it wanted to in negotiating its contracts, to designate the Chancery Court for resolution of that dispute. There is an amendment that I would propose on page 1. In this draft at the bottom on line 14, the words "and exclusive" are deleted, and that may have unintended consequences. So it would be my proposal that this bill be amended to strike the deletion and return it to its original text on page 1. Page 2. States.
Strike on line 14 and exclusive.
Correct. That would you'd go back to the original language. And that was in consultation both with the local governmental liability pool that had that recommendation, and also in consultation with the chief of staff to the governor. Both thought that it was better to leave the original language. On page 2, it creates the exception, except that claims or counterclaims in an action based on a contract entered into by a governmental entity may be brought in the Chancery Court if the contract provides that the Chancery Court shall be the venue for disputes arising under the contract, and the claim or counterclaim is otherwise within the jurisdiction of the Chancery Court. So the idea here is that if the state wants to be a plaintiff, then with, say, an investment advisor where things go sideways, if you're in district court, then your case gets stuck behind all the other priority cases, juvenile cases, criminal cases, Title 25, and the process tends to be a lot slower, whereas Chancery Court's designed to be much faster. So I would stand for any questions.
Questions? Okay. Any public comment on the bill? Any public comment on the bill? Close public comment. Motion on the bill.
Move the bill.
Second. Moved by Representative Larson, seconded by Representative Walters. Is there amendment?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would move that the strike through on line 14 of page 1 and exclusive be deleted, thus restoring the original language of the statute.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Any other amendments? Roll call.
Representative Henderson. Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Sherwood. Representative Stith.
Aye.
Representative Walters. Representative Swanitzer.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. Okay, we will let our good representative from the land of the green present that bill on the floor. Okay, let's move on to nursing homes, 125. Veterans, come on up. Anyone that wants to speak on the bill? There we go.
Hi, Ron, how are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, member of the House Appropriations. My name is Franz Fuchs. I'm a policy analyst with the Wyoming Department of Health and one of 3 bureaucrats who has done some of these VA grant applications. So while we didn't write the bill, I can probably provide some background if you like, Mr. Chairman,
Please, yeah.
or just walk through the bill and talk to our observations on it.
So
So,
the background is that we did this once already, but we're allowed one more, or we may be allowed one more. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, we've done one nursing home, which is almost being finished construction, and we've done another second application to renovate the domiciliary side of the campus in Buffalo. This would be a third application to do a second nursing home, which is allowable, but I can get into some of the complications.
Okay.
Would you like me to do some background first or
Please,
just
yeah.
proceed? Okay. So members of the committee, the Department of Veterans Affairs, or VA, operates what's called the VA State Home.
Slow down a little bit, because the echo makes your words run together.
And get close.
The State Home Construction Grant Program. VA state homes go back a long time, probably to the Civil War, and these are essentially state-operated nursing homes and assisted living facilities, although the VA calls them domiciliaries. It's basically the same level of care. So long-term care facilities for veterans and potentially their spouses, operated by the state, but the VA will contribute a 65% match on the construction of these homes and also pay a per diem per veteran who's at there, as well as for veterans with service-connected disability, they will pay a much higher rate. So there's a lot of funding that goes both on the construction side and on the operations side of these facilities. The state of Wyoming, we currently operate the Wyoming Veterans Home. We have since the post-World War II. In the historic site of Fort McKinney in Buffalo. And yes, sir.
And Stefan, so that domiciliary, I think we refer to it as, it's not a skilled nursing facility, but it's more of an assisted living facility.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, that is correct. It's an assisted living facility level of care. The VA calls them domiciliary. That's just a specific DVA word for that. So that's been in operation for some time. A couple of years ago, I think in 2014 or 15, there was an effort started to try to build a nursing home level of care. We did a study in 2018 on needs analysis on that nursing home level of care. We, as the Department of Health and the Veterans Commission and State Construction Department, we all recommended 3 sites, Buffalo, Sheridan, and Casper as potential sites for this new skilled nursing facility. The legislature chose to put it in Buffalo on the existing campus. We applied to the VA, received the funding, and have done construction, or we're almost complete with that facility. Should open next month. And it's a 36-bed nursing home in the greenhouse style, which is a very home-like atmosphere, cottage-like environment, very far removed from the institutional type hallways and of traditional nursing homes. And that's, so now we have approximately 70 residents on the domiciliary side in Buffalo, and we'll have 36 beds in the nursing home in Buffalo. The VA allows us as a state 154 beds combined. And I can give this the CFR if you're interested, but basically we're going to have 77 new beds at the new domiciliary if that's funded, and 36 beds at the new nursing home in Buffalo if that's funded. So that leaves us about 41 beds that could potentially be used for another facility elsewhere. So that hopefully answers the question in some of this bill on sort of the maximum page 2 lines 8 and 10 about the number of beds that are authorized. It's 154 that are authorized total. So this project would have us, is essentially a very big study bill. It has us go, the State Construction Department do a level 1 reconnaissance and level 2 feasibility studies. It provides, so that's in section 1A on page 1. Section B provides the appropriation for that level 1 and level 2. And then page 3, it just sort of specifies talking about the Veterans Commission and Department of Health providing assistance for level 1, level 2, going through the required statutory process for those contracts, and a reporting requirement on section E, lines 15 through 23 on page 3. And then there's a second parallel study. So this is subsection F.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
So on section B there, where we have the 300,000 appropriation for the level 1, as part of that reconnaissance study to determine where in the state an appropriate option or options would be to locate that, is that part of that
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, I believe that's correct. Typically, level one, level two it's nice to have a location in advance, but we have done it where we had, looked at multiple options in a level one, level two before. I think the level two, you start needing that specific location, needs to be a little more specific.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, if I may follow up, I think that's kind of I think everything we've done in the recent past, we've already had a site identified before we do a level one. And so I'm trying to,
Well, we had potential sites.
we had potential sites. And I'm just wanting to make sure that we understand if this will take care of that, if that's part of that process, or if we have another process that then provides to the Department of Construction potential sites. I'm just trying to figure out how that should work.
And Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, there's sort of a parallel study on section F, so page 4. So this is where the Department of Health is basically says shall conduct a study examining the availability of personnel to staff a second veteran skilled nursing facility and such. So these studies are, I guess, happening at the same time, roughly speaking. And ideally, our study in section F would inform that level one, level two before it's complete.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So the question, Hans, is if we let availability of personnel be a dominant criteria, then the larger metropolitan areas will rise to the top. And then, that was kind of the issue with Buffalo. And so I'm just curious, when we did it before, how much did that play into this process? And does it, how is it weighted? So you got Casper, Cheyenne, maybe Sheridan, maybe Gillette, maybe, places, Green River, Rock Springs. How do we get other communities involved?
Mr. Chairman, in our 2018 study, which I'm happy to provide the committee, we tried to come up with, we had a series of public meetings and tried to come up with weights, like assessing these various criteria. And how do we weight amenities versus the scenery versus proximity to the VA versus specialists available. And of course, things like, the cost of long-term care and how many, nurses and CNAs would be available in that community. So we did have a weighting matrix. I could give that to you. Proximity to family was the #1 pick. Low cost of long-term care. So that includes labor costs, and the availability of nursing staff was #2. Proximity to a VA was #3. And then the things like cost of living in the community, outdoor rec, amenities, veterans organizations and such came afterwards. If that gives you an idea of kind of what was considered, but we do have those numbers here and the rankings of those each city. Buffalo, Casper, and Sheridan were the top 3. And then I can get you the other rankings here. I think Lander was next, and Gillette, and then Lander would be the next 2 after that. So we did consider a wide range of cities across the state.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a while since we reviewed this subject. The ability to place these individuals in existing homes, but under that veterans designation. So an already existing operating home in Evanston or Casper, and utilize 4 beds in one and 5 beds in another. How does that play out?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, the VA can and does contract with private nursing homes, but that's not really a state. We don't have any jurisdiction or ability to influence that. So these are specifically to state homes, which are state owned and operated facilities.
So, Mr. Chairman, following up on that, so if the federal side contracted with a private facility, it would not count against that 154 count. It would just, it's only state-owned facilities that we have the 150 count.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, that's correct.
Thank you.
Follow up on that, Mr. Chairman. So, Hans, do we have any of our nursing homes around the state that contract for those federal beds that you're aware of?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, I'm not aware of any of those contracts. I think the VA has significant capacity both in Cheyenne and in Sheridan at its VAMCs for long-term care. So I'm not aware they actually do any contracts, but that would be, we could certainly try to follow up if that's.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I was just wondering if, I mean, considering the location and the current, the having just done this, right, in terms of looking at workforce, design work and whatnot. Looking at a place, just picking one at random, like Riverton area, around that area. Would that be a location that could be perhaps an opportunity for us to take a look at existing facilities and labor force, workforce for this purpose? In terms of planning?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, the workforce issue is pretty complex, from, at least from my perspective, and we'd probably want to visit more with, workforce services and their labor folks. What we looked at in the past was the prevailing wage in that area. The idea being that for nurses and CNAs, the idea being if there's a tightening of the labor market, you would see higher wages. So that we basically lower wages would indicate more of a supply of a workforce potentially. We also looked at proximity to CNA training programs and how far away from those programs each site was and how many graduates were produced from that site as sort of new workforce. It's just economics in general is pretty tough because it's a very dynamic kind of system, right? With supply and demand, and trying to figure out how it interacts with the private workforce is a pretty difficult question, certainly beyond my expertise. And we'd have to probably loop in some folks from workforce services, try to figure out a way to figure that out.
But Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
isn't that really kind of what you're trying to accomplish in that later section that you shared with me earlier?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, we'd get another chance to either update this study and tailor it to the needs of the statute and come up with those recommendations.
Further questions for Hans?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize to come into this conversation late. Can you just give me the backstory on why the not less than 75 miles from the existing facility in Buffalo? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Sherwood, we didn't write this bill, so I can't tell you the rationale for that.
Mr. Chairman. So can you, before we shift gears and start talking about the bill itself, can you tell us some of the challenges you mentioned? I thought that perhaps there might be some,
So, Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, I think the biggest challenge here will be getting VA funding. The VA allocates its state home construction grant program. Every year, they get, of course, a lot of applications from a lot of states, and they rack and stack those applications based on a methodology set in rule. And happy to provide that to the committee. But basically, if you don't get a high enough priority in that listing, your request pretty much languishes indefinitely. They usually they have a certain amount of money and they just work down and fund by that priority. So happy to give you the citation. It's 38 CFR 59.50 talks about the priority list. And so the first priority is life safety construction issues, which this would not fall under. That's, if there's an imminent danger to residents, those are the kind of grants get funded first. The second sub priority 2 is for states that have not previously applied for a grant. So that's how we got the nursing home funded before. That's how we got to the top of the priority list. We were the second priority because we had never applied for a nursing home before. Now that we have one, this would be a second nursing home. So we would not meet that criteria. And unfortunately, we'd be down all the way down probably in sub priority 7, which would be at the very bottom of this group 1 listing. And that is an application for construction or acquisition of a nursing home or domiciliary from a state that has a limited need for beds that the state in the application proposes to establish. And they define limited further on as a state has a limited need for nursing home and domiciliary beds if the state has an unmet need of 999 or fewer nursing home or domiciliary beds. So the fact that they define it as a number and we're a small state means there's no way we could ever hope to meet that bar just based on numbers. So we would almost certainly fall into that last category for funding, which means an application I think would be challenging to say the least. And particularly given the escalation in construction costs, once you get an estimate of those costs and you're just waiting for that funding year after year, those costs can obviously exceed your initial estimates significantly. So from Mr. Chairman, that's for me, the biggest challenge of trying to build a second nursing home is just getting the VA funding match.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So looking at the other end of it, on the resident or the occupants, what's it look like in Wyoming in the near future in terms of population of those folks that may likely be considered or in the population that this facility could help?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, in our 2018 report, we estimated there were around 300 veterans in the state that would need nursing home level of care. However, many of those veterans are served in private nursing homes close to their houses or to their homes. And obviously people prefer to remain close to family. That's one of the biggest criteria that we had. So we tried to estimate by site, each site, how many veterans would be attracted potentially to a skilled nursing facility in each location. And I could provide that data to you, but at the end of the day, the veteran population is stable and will increase slightly over the next 20 years. That needs long-term care because you have demographics, particularly the Vietnam veteran demographic that is aging. But the overall veteran population is shrinking. It's just this older demographic that's projected to
Austin, do
stabilize.
we have information on what percentage of that 300 are Native American?
Mr. Chairman, I doubt we could get that. The veteran models that the VA publishes are pretty limited to male, female, and 5-year age demographics. I'm not sure they have.
I'm curious just because if we built this in Land or Riverton, if it might move us up in the priority ranking, if we're dealing with specific underserved populations in Wyoming.
Mr. Chairman, I can't speak to how the VA does anything beyond what they have in rule. And unfortunately, the rules that they lay out put us at that very last bucket. So maybe within that bucket, it might have an effect, but they are required by those rules to allocate the projects accordingly. So,
Mr. Chairman.
So the question is, does it make sense to apply? We're going to be at the bottom of the list and spend $300,000. That's the real question. And once you're in line, do you stay in line? Or do you have to re-up, reapply? So it just sits on the list.
Mr. Chairman, is my understanding it sits on the list. And we have yet to find out whether this domiciliary renovation will be funded. We should find out next month if we're on the list or where we are on the list. But we still don't know if that one is happening.
So in other words, it's if we just stay on the list, unless circumstances change, it might be more than $300,000 if we do this 2 years from now or 3 years, 5 years from now.
Mr. Chairman, I think the main problem with being on the list indefinitely is really the cost estimate, and that really only happens with level 3. So I think if you stop before level 3, there's still valuable information from a level 1, level 2. I don't think that expires per se. So I'm not sure it's a total waste or total loss, right? It's
would it be worthwhile inserting information on the work that you do? If we can determine that there are say 25 Native Americans that will qualify for this in the next 4 or 5 years and would benefit from this, I think that would be useful information to go in our application. And it was, near their domicile. And so that may be useful information.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree.
So stepping on this, is the requirement in B with that appropriations of that feasibility study, is that feasibility study a component of the application, or could you do the application, then once you see it moving up the list, engage in that level 1 and level 2 study?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, we typically need information from the level 2. The 35% design drawings, I think, are required as part of the application. So I'd have to confirm. I think the best person to confirm that would be state construction, but I'm pretty sure we definitely used information from the level 2 in our application.
Would we not use the same design we just did?
Mr. Chairman, I think that we have a great design. I don't know how it would translate to whatever other site. I'm sure there's geotechnical I'm not an engineer either, so there may be factors that may not allow that specific type to be built, but it is a really nice design.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Stiff.
Mr. Fuchs, you mentioned that CFR site. Could you give that again?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stith, I'll, try to figure it out in my mass of papers here. I might have actually shuffled it in with my study. Yes, I did. So the priority listing, Mr. Chairman, Representative Stith, would be 38 CFR 59.50.
Thank you.
Yeah. Representative or Chairman Eklund, would you like to give us any additional information? Insights? Or maybe a joke?
No jokes. Committee, I'm sorry for being late. I didn't know I'd be up that quickly. That's kind of a bleak picture when it looks like we're at the bottom of the list. We knew when we got the first one funded, we'd be a priority and at the top of the list. We were the only state that didn't have one. But it also was indicated that we could probably build other ones. They wouldn't necessarily be a priority. I don't know what the sub-priority 7 exactly means. That the picture that was painted when we did the first one, there were other states that had 3 or 4 of these things. It sounded like we could get several within Wyoming as well. And I don't know whether that policy has changed or not. If we can do this and get on a priority list, I think, so we have to wait an extra, it took 6 years to build one and we were a first in line priority on the first one. I'm thinking, my thinking was that we should probably do this while there were still a few of us in legislature that remembered the process we went through, and I've already forgotten quite a lot of it. But there are a lot of people missing. I guess that worked on it before. I'd like to do it now while it's still fresh in our mind. If we can, we probably need to find, I don't want to waste $300,000. I don't. And I pulled the bill before I believed we would do that. But I guess I'd question, how long we'd have to wait. The other part, I'm not sure I'm clear on, is if we do this, we don't damage the efforts to fix the domiciliary at Buffalo. That was a question that's been asked. I haven't been able to answer it, and I missed some of the conversation. I know that that's in the works, the repair and rebuilding of that facility. So I don't want this to interfere with that either. And those are most of my comments on it.
So, Mr. Chairman, Franz, would you mind, let's just answer that. So it sounds like you're waiting, you anticipate the answer on the domiciliary in the near future.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, yes, we anticipate next month that we would hear where we are on the list.
And then if we have approval of the domiciliary, or if we don't have approval of the domiciliary, does the domiciliary, well, let's just say if it's approved, we understand that. If it's not approved, does it wait on a list or do we reapply?
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that it would stay on the list.
It stay on the list. So if it was on the list and then we put this on the list, are those competing programs, in your opinion?
So, Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, our VA DOM rehabilitation is a priority group 1, sub-priority 4, which is, 4 down from the top. And that's an application from a state for renovations to a state home facility other than renovations that would be included in the life safety. So because it's a renovation project, it's a higher priority than a new construction.
And so then, Mr. Chairman, my question back to Chairman Eklund is from what we've heard from Franz as he's been presenting, is that this proposed skilled nursing facility would require an infusion of several $100,000 to where we could get up to 35% of drawings and then submit the application, and then the application based on our estimates or our understanding of that would probably sit for a period of time. And so my question to you is now the time? I don't argue with your point on we may all be dead and gone, but do we, if we go through that expense and do a level 1, level 2 study and get drawings up to 35%, by the time we get on, there's also a possibility that the validity of those drawings need to be updated. So I'm just wondering is this premature, or are you still thinking that this is something we need to get done right now?
Mr. Chairman, I guess a question I'm a little unclear on is if we had this in the queue presently, do we have to redo the entire thing once I'm wanting to get on the list, and maybe we don't know the answer to that. I don't know if anyone knows the answer, but if we're way down the list on a priority, I'd like to see us get into it now. I don't want to waste money doing it, and I can see the challenges we're getting into. We're a sub-priority 7 because of population, in part because of our size and population, Mr. Chairman.
So Franz, how much of the 300,000 are for level 1, level 2s?
Mr. Chairman, I'm afraid I don't know. Typically, I think we procured them together, so I'd have to defer to construction department as to far how that breaks out.
To me, we just built one. So why we wouldn't just piggyback that and not pay for any additional? And just submit that as we want to look the same. And then we could probably do this for 80,000.
Mr. Chairman,
300,000.
I think, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I think we have to have site specific, and the plans are part of the application, and once approved, then that's what is approved is the plans as you submit. And so if you don't have the site and the drawings and all of that put together, then you would be unable to apply up front to even get on the list.
I'm not arguing
And-
with that. Obviously, they'll pick three sites again. And no matter what, I think we're going to need to tailor the building to adapt to, because each site is going to have a different look to it. So we can probably get past that level 1, level 2 with what we have at any site. And then we change it.
You'll still have your engineering, your site-specific engineering. If you do that with 3 sites, you're probably 300,000.
I don't think you do it. You don't do the engineering.
Well, how then do you determine what it's going to require per site?
I think that's pretty fundamental,
I don't think so.
depending on where you put it.
Well, I agree with that.
And that could be part of your site. All right, and it should. Representative Stiff.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Fuchs, it looks like the priority list is based upon whether the state has a great need, a significant need, or a limited need for such a facility. That's their prioritization, essentially. If you're not renovating a facility, you're constructing a new one. Is it your understanding that Wyoming would only be able to show that it has a limited need, and that puts us at the bottom in category 7?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stiff, yes, I think there's a section G in that same statute, or sorry, rule, that talks about for the purpose that defines what those are: great, significant, and limited. And so G3 states a state has limited need for nursing home and domiciliary beds if the state has an unmet need of 999 or fewer nursing home and dom beds. So just by virtue of having a small veteran population, we would never meet the significant or great standards.
Mr. Chairman, so does that mean that essentially this will never get funded because there'll always be a state that's got a higher priority than we do?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stiff, I don't want to speculate on that. I can just say we're going to be at the very low priority as far as.
We could have the Department of Tourism advertise for it on buses in Seattle.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to clarify, though, that the state home construction grant program and the VA per diem are different programs. So you can have a state home if the state were to fund it itself through state funds or ARPA dollars or whatever. We could still get the VA per diem and apply as long as it's under that bed cap, the 154 beds. So this wait list and prior to list only applies to the matching funds for construction.
Okay, further questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So given what we've talked about, how long is there a shelf date? How long is what we've done today still valid for this purpose?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, I think a lot of it is valid. The real wild card that I see is how the COVID pandemic has impacted the nursing labor market. That would be, I think, the most interesting thing to study, and is specifically mentioned in section F of this bill is looking at the labor supply issues. And I don't know if that's changed differentially across the state or if it's affected the entire state as a whole. That would be my main question, just with, going into this.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just one more comment on,
Either one. He'll probably have to answer this question. If we funded it completely by ourselves without the matching fund, would the per diem pay for the building? That's was a big selling point the last time we did this. Do you have an idea how that would work?
So, Mr. Chairman, Representative Eklund, we took out a substantial loan for our state match from the treasurer's office or department, the state treasurer, at, I think, the state agency pool interest rate, 15-year loan, I think around $9 million. That amortized out to, we're expecting around $800,000 capital cost to repay that every year. And that's still a significant expense. So to assume the entire cost of construction, not just the 35% match, I think that would balloon significantly. So it's possible. I'm not sure it would make money. It would be much harder to make money or to break even.
Or pay for it.
Or pay for itself. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to public comment. Any public comment? Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Ann Clement. I represent the Alzheimer's Association Wyoming chapter. And I'm here just to speak on behalf of the veterans with dementia. Veterans are 2.5 times more likely to develop dementia as they age. And as we do see our population here over the age of 65 growing as it relates to the rest of the population, access to these memory care beds would be extremely important. So if it's a point of order, I apologize if I'm out of order, Mr. Chair, but if we could ask about the prioritization, if there's an ability to include memory care, because the current skilled facility doesn't offer memory care as part of the study for the viability for this center, would that put us in a different place in the priority scale?
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is it does not. That they really only differentiate between nursing home and domiciliary levels of care. The rules don't specify any of their gradation. So it may be something similar to your previous question, that it might affect our ranking within those groupings. But I don't see anything in the CFR that would give us higher priority based on that additional level of care.
We wish.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tim Shepard, Executive Director, Wyoming Veterans Commission. Good afternoon, committee. Nice to see you.
See you again, Tim.
So the Veterans Commission stands in support of this bill and the project and helping to work with health and with construction to try to move this forward. I mean, from a veteran standpoint, it's a great thing. Is it really going to be doable? That's kind of outside my lane. But I do know that we certainly could support it and would support it, and that the veteran population, especially to try to do something. What I hear is, hey, the next time you do something, try to do it in Western Wyoming. It seems like everything we do in the eastern side of the state. What about the western side? So Riverton, when you mentioned that, that's exactly what the thought that runs through my mind. That we'd have to go through the process. But I would think that from a criteria standpoint, from a veteran standpoint, that would weigh pretty heavily that they'd like to see something. But I also know those other considerations of trying to man it and support it and all of that take priority too. But bottom line, we support the bill.
How many, what's our estimated number of aging and veterans in the state of Wyoming? Do we have those numbers?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have that number. I mean, we actually struggle with what is the number of veterans in Wyoming today. By the VA, we say it's about 48,000. And you talked about the Native American population. We think that within that 48,000, there are about 900 who are Native Americans. 900 to 1,000.
Just veterans.
Just veterans.
Any more information?
Mr. Chairman, in 2018, we estimated, so of the around 48,000 veterans, the population over 80 will increase from 5,000 to 7,000 and out to 2030. And of that, we estimate around 300 of those require nursing home level of care.
So you can demonstrate a need. It's just a question of how much and what priority we get.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, and per the rule, unfortunately, just based on that small number, we're never going to hit 999.
So, Mr. Chairman, so that shows we're 30% need. Right.
Which, I mean, if we submit the application and if we can use our existing designs and do it for less expensive, I mean, it would just make more sense. Because if we're going to sit on the waiting list for 10 years, no matter whatever design we have, it's going to be redone. So is it still a greenhouse model design? Is that part of the?
Mr. Chairman, it's 12-bed cottages, very home-like, greenhouse-like model.
So particularly when you're limited to a greenhouse model, there's not a lot you can do. So, okay. Thank you. And Tim, anything else?
No, Mr. Chairman, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other public comment? Hans, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I should have mentioned this earlier, but the appropriation in section G, this is to the health department for the purposes of doing the study in F, $50,000. We likely can handle this study in-house like we did last time. So we would likely revert that appropriation.
So to revert that appropriation, is that right? Deny it.
Mr. Chairman, we wouldn't need it most likely unless the legislature specifically wanted to contract it out.
So is there language we can put in here that directs that the level 1, level 2 is done using the existing designs? And so I have that part of the code. Or how do we go about doing that?
As he ponders that, I have a follow-up to that. Instead of passing the bill, Franz, what if we were to create just basically an interim topic on this, directing yourself or your department and the state construction to pursue and report back? Because really all this bill does is say report back in October what you've discovered. And if we said, can you just do that? And then by October, we'd have a better feel for, after that information were in hand, better feel for how likely it would be and how efficiently we could spend our dollars moving forward in terms of how to apply and all those other things versus a bill here today that we could potentially spend $300,000 to end up in the same place. What are your thoughts on that approach?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, I think we certainly would be happy to do any kind of study. Where we lack the expertise is on the construction side, obviously. So the level 1, level 2 has a lot of There is a lot of stuff we can do in that, like looking at the census estimates and where the veterans are and those kind of things, which are very similar to section F. But there are, of course, things, site-specific geotechnical surveys, engineering-specific things that we typically go out and hire consultants for. So I think we could get some of it if we did it on our own, but the full level 1, level 2 would be tough to do without contract.
Okay. So what what we were mumbling about up here is that if we might want to meet with construction management and see what they are capable of doing, and we could spoon this into the capital construction bill at a lesser amount and give them directives to go out and do it and using existing designs. And having the agencies work together to come up with something by October versus spending $300,000 on a consultant. And we could give that money to the construction management. They'd be jumping up and down and count stones. So before we act on the bill, I think Mr. Vice Chair will contact Jerry and have the discussion with him and run through this bill.
Mr. Chairman, if we could have the good bill sponsor, John, does that give you any heartburn if we just stepped aside from this bill and tried to put this in a CapCon bill to have the Department of Construction, Department of Health kind of get that and then report back as your bill requires on then determine if we move forward? That may be that we have a bill next session that we say we put in the application, but at least we'd have a kind of a understanding.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'd be delighted if we can do anything after some of the testimony I heard. I didn't have time to research this thing ahead of time, or I wouldn't have probably worked on the bill at all. It was fairly easy to do because it was already done. But a couple minutes ago, I was contemplating just withdrawing the bill so you guys wouldn't have to vote on it. But I think if you can do that and do enough of a study to come back in October.
Well, and I think that would be the end result, is we just let this bill go by the wayside and work with you on and have you bring that amendment in our CapCon bill when we have it on the floor, but have the information that you can provide it. And then that's trying to amend that into a CapCon bill our CapCon bill when we work it on the floor.
But before we do that,
We'll get some
we'll meet
information.
with, Jerry over at construction management, kind of work what needs to be done, see if you can do it. He's got the time to do it. And if he needs money to help do it, then we'll report back to you before we kick this bill out and let you know what the options are. That work?
Yes, thank you, committee.
So I move we table this bill.
Okay, let's table. Okay, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Next, we've got Don here to go through a draft bill with us, which is, go ahead, Don.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Draft Bill 23 LSO 0469 is titled the School Foundation Program Reserve Account Investments. And you'll recall that this bill, if you choose to sponsor it, will require a 2/3 vote of all members pursuant to Article 16, Section 6A, Romanet 2B. This bill really only does one thing, and it allows
This bill is in this. Folder. Let's let everyone get it out for a second.
0469 draft point 3.
Correct.
Okay. Got it. Everyone got it?
Yep.
All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is a relatively short bill, 2.5 pages, and it really does just one thing, and that's authorize the investment of the SFPRA, that's the School Foundation Program Reserve Account, in equities. And as I indicated, once you do this does require a 2/3 vote pursuant to the Constitution. This is structured identically to the LSRA ability to invest in equities. There is no set threshold for example, 50% or 25%. It leaves the decision of future investments up to this treasurer's office and their investment team, recognizing the highest risk-adjusted total net return. So this is different than Pool A. So you're not putting this into Pool A. If this fund were to grow, for instance, to the size of an LSRA or something like that, you could decide how much do you want to be liquid to support school capital construction or school foundation projects, as opposed to how much do you want to be invested for the long term. Currently, there's about $58 million in cash in this account. It is invested in the state agency pool. As you can imagine, that does not generate a whole lot of return. Hard to predict what this balance will be at the end of the biennium. You used a little, well, $45 million of it this morning for a school capital construction amendment. But barring no amendments, this would grow to about 160 million by the end of the biennium, reduced by whatever amounts you appropriate. So it is growing. It's still comparably small.
So tell us a little bit how this is funded, because this is not part of our reserve or ×5 reserve accounts.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. And this is really just maybe an account in its infancy. The LSRA started in 2005, and it really had no dedicated source of funding. The legislature deposited. This account also has no dedicated source of funding. However, the House side insisted on an amendment in the budget bill that takes 40% of severance taxes over the second cap. And that's the only revenue stream, and it only lasts for 2 years. Now, it might be continued, who knows, with future action, but it doesn't have a dedicated source at this time.
Over the second cap?
It's over the second cap, Mr. Chairman. It would require, additional action in the future if you wanted to sustain that revenue source or another revenue source. One last point is these dollars, unlike most of the other dollars on the page 4 of the profile for K-12, these are not constitutionally dedicated. They're not like property taxes. They're not like investment income. You have a lot more flexibility with these dollars. So you might want to think about that before commingling them with, say, common school investment income.
Mr. Chairman, such as, don't we understand, and I appreciate the flexibility, because you caught me right in the middle of the thinking, maybe we take this money and put it in as part of the 5, use it to feel part of that and just get rid of that. But tell me about the flexibility.
Mr. Chairman, there are a lot of potential educational pursuits that members may or may not support. So hypothetically, early childhood care might not apply to the strict limits of public education. Some of the vocational programs for higher education. So it just has a broader sense and purpose.
So we had a bill yesterday talked about CPP and we put 250,000 in that. We could fund such a program with this.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
And have it outside the model so we can change it, delete it if we need to.
Mr. Chairman, that's also correct on the
But
expenditure
if
side.
we put this into a permanent type of where we can earn 6 to 7% interest on it, then we can use the interest to fund those things. For example, for early childhood issues or preschool concepts. And so what we're trying to do is create a mechanism to maximize these dollars until we know what to do.
Mr. Chairman, so is it fair to say then there's a trade-off between maximizing your return and having a broader purpose for the funds?
Well, no, because if we create a separate fund that is invested, we still have that broad purpose. We just don't have as much. We just do it with interest rather than the corpus. Is that right, Don?
Mr. Chairman, this bill before you does not make it permanent, so you could still invade the corpus. I think if I'm understanding, Representative Stith is saying there might be a trade-off between maximum return and accessibility, liquidity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So does, Mr. Chairman, so does the action of this bill, would that in any way limit our ability to start using or accessing the 58 million for projects that we maybe see in this session?
Mr. Chairman, this bill would not, but that's a great point looking forward. If you're going to access the bulk of this fund in the future and treat it more like the SIPA where you spend most of it, this bill, the state treasurer's office, even if this was in place, based upon their prior action, they're not investing their reserve accounts in equities when they believe there's a chance that there may be a draw upon them. So this is just providing the authority. It does not guarantee what the state treasurer's office will elect to do.
Got it. Okay.
Randy, what's your preference?
Move, Bill.
Second.
Appropriations bill.
That's what it would be.
Question on the bill?
Go ahead.
We moved and seconded.
Any question on the bill?
Mr. Chairman, I could call the roll and we can get this numbered as a House bill. Did you want to take any public?
Any public comment on the bill? Come on, Becky.
Come on,
Pick
Becky.
up.
Mr. Chairman, the motion was on 23 LSO 0469, working draft 0.3. Representative Henderson, Representative Larson,
Yes.
Representative Sherwood, Representative Stith, Representative Walters, Representative Zwanitzer Dave,
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, the motion is adopted.
Which ones?
30 and 1 on.
Oh, okay. Okay, committee, we're gonna reopen House Bill 30 and House Bill 109 that we voted on yesterday. I had the language mixed up, so I had Jackie draft them up and then Lloyd and Tom courteously reviewed my markup and they said, no, you got it wrong. We got to rewrite those things. And then since then, I had long discussions with our good prior speaker over dinner last night. And I said, okay, since we're going to reopen them, I'll make a motion to increase the 40 million in his bill to 60 million. And then in Albert's bill, we'll keep it at 40s and we'll let Harshman's bill run first. Remember, this is creating the trust, the endowment for these particular things. And so with that,
Mr. Chairman.
go ahead. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, maybe I could just share.
Just to be safe, we'll do this right. Is there a motion to reopen? Moved and seconded to reopen, moved by Representative Walters, seconded by Representative Henderson. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, and that was going to be my question. I appreciate that. So if we could kind of open these at the same time, let's look at House Bill. I can find House Bill 30, House Bill 30 first. And House Bill 30 is the speaker's bill. And it's on the Wyoming Tomorrow Scholarship. It joined, yes, joined it. Yeah. And so you'll recall, I believe what we've done in here, I don't have the one that has all my notes on it.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to help my good friend here.
When I'm
I
ready,
believe on page 5,
when I'm ready, I'll have my good friend help me.
House Bill 30 on page 5. Jackie will correct me, but I believe at the top of the page in that 15, we reduced it to 5. So as we reopen this, we would leave that down at the 5 million on line 4. Page 5, line 4, we're at 5 million. Then we'd move down to page 5, line 9, the 90 million, we would set at 60 million. And then the final action, Mr. Chairman, is if you go to page 5 of 109, the bottom of the page, we have the Wyoming Works funding. And so I believe it is the desire of the chairman to bring lines, we're now discussing page 109, House Bill 109, page 5, starting at line 17 through the bottom of the page and the top of page 6. So we would bring the Wyoming Works program funding and language from 109 into House Bill 30. I believe that was the chairman's desire when we discussed this previous. So that's the motion. A question of Jackie. In 109, did we reduce the 15 million or 5 million?
Yes,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, on page 4, line 18, what you did yesterday was you changed the 75 million to 40 million. And then you inserted a new B to read, on July 1st, 2023, the state auditor shall transfer $5 million from the general fund to the Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship Expenditure Account. And then B would then become C on line 22. And then on page 5, line 18, you change the 15 million down to 10 million.
And that was it.
And then on page 6, you're inserting a new section 3 that reads, if both House Bill 30, Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship Program amendments, and this act pass, the provisions of this act shall control.
That was in 109, correct?
That, all of those changes, yes, Representative Larson, we're in 109.
Mr. Chairman, for Representative Walters, do you mind explaining again? I know you said it perfectly clearly. I just didn't process it. What your amendment on page 5?
So page
Which
109.
bill? We're on page 5 of both bills.
Mr. Chairman and Representative, speaking in House Bill 109, on page 5, line 17 to the bottom of the page, top of page 6 is the Wyoming Works language. In your mind, cut and paste that language out of 109. It'll remain in 109. However, you're just going to cut and paste it so you can paste it into House Bill 30 with the one caveat being that the 15 million is now 10 million, as it is now pasted into 130. That's the, or into 30, excuse me. That's the amendment. If that's clear, I'm just.
Mr. Chairman, that helps a lot. So basically both bills as amended would deal with both Wyoming's Tomorrow and the Wyoming Works.
However,
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, however, the amounts in the Wyoming's Tomorrow will be different, 60 in 109, 40 in 30.
Thank you.
Both of them will have, in both bills, both Wyoming Works, Wyoming Tomorrows have a $5 million appropriation to start to allow them to effectuate it this year.
Thank you. Perfect.
Voila. Does everyone understand the motion?
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, as amended, can we vote on 30 and 109 together?
Aye.
Roll call on 30.
Okay, Representative Henderson,
No, you're supposed to say aye.
Representative Larson,
Aye.
Representative Sherwood, Representative Stitt,
Aye.
Representative Walters,
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer,
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye, aye, Captain. Okay. Mission accomplished. Thank you.
Now we should adjourn and get.
No, let's wait.
Well, we
Let's do
have
this.
State Senator or United States Senator coming at 2:15.
We've got 3 minutes. Re-referrals, House Bill 182, 181. These are our bills referred back to us.
Okay.
So let's just pick them out. And then we can do it. Okay. One is on 181 is online schools region.
I'll address them both real quick, Mr. Chairman. Both of these came from our December meetings. I know Trey and Dave, Representative Swanitzer and Representative Sherwood were not here, but they were listening. And these are really technical corrections relating to the personnel primarily, that we can do background checks and various things. And then also on the sports wagering, it further defines our carryover figures from month to month in calculation. So I would describe them both as being cleanup, but also fixing the growing pains of these nascent industries.
Basically, they came to us and asked us to do this. And we said, sure, we'll go.
So I would, Mr. Chairman, I would move House Bill 181 as due pass.
Any public comment? Close public comment, do pass,
Second.
roll call.
Representative Henderson. Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Sherwood. Representative Stitt.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
I would move House Bill 182 due pass. Skill-based amusement games amendments.
Public comment? We'll close public comment. Go ahead. Move the bill.
Representative Henderson. Representative Larson.
Larson.
Yes, I had to contemplate on it.
Representative Sherwood. Representative Stitt.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. Tom, I think.
We decided to send that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Good.